way. The situation is not like that. What Yoon is trying to pose.
Come in on this one as well. The opposition that, in South Korea, what they're essentially suggesting is that under President Yoon, this is authoritarianism. There is claims of political manipulation, of course, concerns over civil liberties as well. So you've got arguments on both sides. Which side of the fulcrum on this Libra scale do you think is heavier right now?
As far as President is concerned, he is feeling that he is quite weak. Because in parliament, he does not enjoy majority, he is not able to function, his popularity has gone down tremendously, a number of charges are against that, corruption charges against his own wife. So he was feeling very vulnerable and he thought that there is no way that he can function independently and actively. And he thought that this is the only way that he can now declare emergency martial law and he will have more power with him and he will able to push his agenda. But I have my doubt whether the US will like it, because very rightly brought my co-panelist. The thing is that what is the difference between North Korea and South Korea? That in case South Korea also have a martial law, the only difference is that North Korea is a communist country, whereas South Korea is a vibrant democracy. But once you declare an emergency martial law for a domestic region, I don't think that the US is going to like it or other European countries are going to support it. I suppose he will have a big challenge with him, and the opposition is becoming stronger by day.
All right.
So now let's see how things pan out. But as on today, it is more of a domestic pressure than anything else, and the pressure will mount on him from US and other European country to revert back to the democracy.
All right. Dr. Hussain and General Siwach, we're going to shift our focus here, but of course it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen next in South Korea. You rightly pointed out how the West world is now going to react to this. That's going to be interesting to see. But could this be a flare-up on the border front? Because we've all been talking about the Kim Jong-un factor, but we still don't know what Kim Jong-un is now going to do after this emergency declaration of martial law in the South Korea. Of course, we'll have to wait and find out as to what happens next on this front. The opposition in South Korea currently in a huddle with all those lawmakers, and of course they control most portion of the national parliament over there as well. Very interesting development. We're going to have to wait and find out what happens next. But shifting our focus to the top development that we're bringing to you at this point in time, because the Syrian city of Aleppo has again become this flashpoint of escalating violence. And let's dissect what all we have at play for the viewers. Who controls what region? What is the Kurdish force essentially meaning here? What does the Turkish, and their role have to do with any of this? And of course, the Russian influence. Has that died down with Aleppo's assault? Let's break that down for the viewers as well. Now, the surprise offensive by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, and pro-Turkish forces, it has delivered a strategic blow to the Assad regime, needless to say, capturing large portions of Aleppo and the rural areas of Hama in the places nearby as well, not just Aleppo, Idlib and Hama, several other rural areas as well. And this shift in the territorial control has reignited Syria's civil war, raising questions about its impact on regional and global players, needless to say. Humanitarian catastrophe continues to widen. The offensive has left 446 people dead and thousands displaced. Russian and Syrian airstrikes have targeted civilian areas, including hospitals, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. And Aleppo residents, they're reporting curfews at the hands of these rebels, several home raids and detentions, which is why thousands are now leaving Aleppo and Idlib altogether. All of this under the new rebel administration that called out its control over just this weekend. Now, why Aleppo is crucial? It's important to take a look at that. Aleppo is not just Syria's second largest city. It's a pivotal economic and strategic hub. Whoever controls Aleppo controls vital trade routes and gains significant leverage in the broader geopolitical game. It captures, symbolizes momentum, needless to say, in this conflict, turning it into a prize. Aleppo city that resonates far beyond Syria's borders. But to understand who controls what in Syria, let's take a look at that as well, ladies and gentlemen. You've got the HTS and the allies. They essentially command Aleppo and parts of Idlib and Hama, consolidating power in the north. Then you have the Assad regime, which is backed by Russia and Iran. It dominates Damascus, central provinces, and southern Syria. Then you've got the Kurdish-led SDF, supported by the United States. It holds the northeastern Syria portion, where oil resources, mind you, bolster their autonomy. You've got the Turkey and allies up in the north. They secure the northern border zones as buffer areas to counter Kurdish influence, especially from the Turkish point of view. And then you have the ISIS remnants that operate from desert hideouts, staging sporadic attacks. The little red portions right at the bottom is the opposition in Syria. This is what Syria looks like at this point in time. Now, Turkey's calculus looks like this. They're seeking an opportunity to expand influence in northern Syria, counter Kurdish forces it deems a terrorist threat, stabilize the border by creating a safe zone to manage the refugee crisis with 3.6 million Syrian refugees already within its border. You've got the Russian gamble as well, because for Russia, Aleppo's loss threatens years of investment in propping up Assad's regime. Moscow's military intervention since 2015 transformed the Syrian war, cementing its power in West Asia. However, setbacks like these erode its credibility as a stabilizer and weaken its strategic presence in the region. Then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, and to the viewers and my esteemed panelists as well, you've got a regional fallout, a weak ceasefire. The conflict in Syria unfolds alongside this growing instability in Lebanon, where a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah forces have, of course, escalated violations. The interconnected strife underscores the volatility across not just simply one region or Gaza or Lebanon, but the entirety of West Asia. Now, Aleppo's fall reshapes Syria's civil war as well and alters regional dynamics. Will it deepen fractures or open pathways to broader geopolitical realignments? Let's continue to dissect these with Dr. Zakir Hussain, Middle East expert, continues to be with us, and Major General Ashwini Sivach. Always a pleasure to have you with us. First to you, Dr. Hussain. What's at play? Who's to blame here? Who's got more to lose, more to win? Is it the Turkish forces? Is it Russia? Can you break that down for our viewers here? Why Aleppo is so crucial and important?
The blame goes to Turkey. It's too ambitious. It intervened in a fresh way because this was visible when second Arab Islamic summit was taking place. When Bashar al-Assad started talking, Erdogan left the meeting, and that was the signal that he is going to take action. But to me, that Turkey is not going to win the war, what according to his agenda, because this is going to be another long drawn war, and the region and the Syrians are going to suffer more, and all the forces will jump in and already jumped in, and Syria will again suffer the same kind of thing which is started suffering since 2011 to 2016. To me, that this time they feel that Hamas is being weakened, Hezbollah is weakened, Iran is being neutralized, so there is no support for Syria, Bashar al-Assad. So this is the golden time to jump and topple the government of Bashar al-Assad. But this is not going to happen very soon because Russia is there. Again, the forces from Iraq is entering into Syria.
Right.
Iran is not. The cost will be, pain will be high to the Iranian and others, but the war is not going to end soon. It is a total war.
Many political analysts and many geopolitical experts out there, Dr. Hussain, are of the opinion that the war hasn't even begun yet. Let me rephrase this for you. Could the Aleppo offensive forge a new international order of the major stakeholders that are at play in Syria? Of all the names that you've already taken, according to their weaknesses and strengths, is the international order in Syria going to change now?
How the major issue is that how the Trump administration is going to intervene in the situation. That will decide more, because on one hand Trump says that he is not going to wage war, he is going to end war, but on the other hand the situation is becoming quite volatile in the last 1 week, and today President-elect Trump has issued a warning against Hamas. That shows that if he is going to mess in the Middle East, he is not going to achieve his objective. So what I feel that the local militias will decide the situation ground, and Russia will continue to support, and what will happen in the coming months and years, it has to be seen, because nothing is going to come out from this imbroglio.
All right. Well, you know what? Interestingly, you've got the head of Syria's main opposition abroad, and General, do pay attention to this as well. He says Syrian rebel fighters began preparations to seize Aleppo a year ago, but the operation was delayed because of the war in Gaza and ultimately launched last week when the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel took place. Listen in.
A year ago, they started really training and mobilizing and taking it more seriously. And it was supposed to happen, if you ask any kid in the, in the area in Azaz or in Jarablus, ask him, he'll tell you, yeah, we are going to go and free Aleppo. And this is like 6 months ago. But the operation was delayed to the crisis in the area, and especially at the end due to the Lebanese, the Israeli-Lebanese war, where the people and commanders on the ground, they saw it's not good to have it while there is a war in Lebanon. So the moment there were a ceasefire in Lebanon, they found that the opportunity is good for them to start.
Well, take a look at that, General. You've got the opposition leader in Syria stating that it was the timing of the ceasefire that led to the rebels entering Aleppo, and it wasn't a question of if, but it was a question of when. They were in preparation about 12 months back as well.
Yeah, very correct, Kabir. But then you have to see a larger picture also. You see, the point today is that who is backing Syria? Today Syria is backed by Russia and Iran. And now what is their position as far as Russia is concerned? They are involved in a war with basically NATO country along with Ukraine. And so is the Iran. Iran attention is also diverted toward Israel, and also it is looking after its all three proxy, Hezbollah, Houthi and Hamas. Now this was a time which they were waiting for it, when they found that Al-Assad will be weak because he is not able to get a support from Russia and Iran. And that is why possibly they were waiting for last 1 year, they were building up. And this Aleppo is a very important town, because remember, this Aleppo was once upon a time with rebels. In 2016, the Syrian forces have taken it back. Now they were waiting for it because this makes a lot of difference in Syria. It's the economic hub center, financial capital. In case it comes into the hands of the rebels, this gives them a platform for further move into Syria. So the point today is, of course, there is no doubt why this time has been selected. One is, of course, Lebanon, the peace talk has taken place. But at the same time, it was that the two main main countries which were supporting Syria, they are weak now. Their attention is diverted somewhere else, and that's why the rebels.
Let me pick up on that, General. Let me pick up on that. What does the fall of Aleppo signify for Russia's military, and its strategy and its foothold in Syria and beyond? I mean, that certainly hurt. I remember Prigozhin. Syria was sort of like a training boot camp area for Prigozhin and his mercenaries, and of course that is now died out. Aleppo's assault and the implications on Putin.
Aleppo is very important for Russia. No doubt that it has invested in Aleppo. There are certain industries also, military industry there. It's an economic hub center. Investment of Russia has also gone in Aleppo. So therefore, Russia will not let it go like this. And that's why you find the Russian Air Force is now basically bombarding those areas which are held by the rebels. They are trying their best. And it is not only Aleppo, Idlib also. So the point today is that the US and the Turkey, which are supporting these rebels, along with the Israel and Saudi and UAE, the situation is very, very complex. But the point is, it is something like a mini world war. But certainly one thing is very clear, the Russia attention may be diverted toward Ukraine, but Russia is still not weak. Russia will support Syria, and Syrian forces, along with the air power of Russia, they will bounce back in Aleppo. It seemingly looks like that. And also that the Iran will also send some sort of help to the Syrian government. So the time will only tell what will be the fate, but the situation is quite critical, and it is a civil war type of thing which can flare up in West Asia. And you find that somewhere the peace was coming up in Lebanon, that there was a talk between Lebanon and Israel. Maybe something will build up between Israel and Hamas, but at the same time, you find that Syria is getting reactivated what it was in 2016. There was a lull period from 2016 till 2024. All of a sudden, you find...
I'll tell you what social media is flooded with right now. Social media says they've stopped a war somewhere, there's a ceasefire somewhere, and then a new front has been opened on the other front. Dr. Hussain, take a look at this. You've got the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, who said just yesterday that Iran will do whatever it can to establish security and peace for the territorial integrity of all countries, without specifying, of course, which country he was referring to. Listen in to what Pezeshkian had to say.
The territorial integrity of all countries is respected, and we must not allow the territorial integrity of any country to be violated under any pretext. As a result, we will do whatever is within our power, offering any assistance necessary to establish security and peace and to combat terrorism.
Now, Dr. Hussain, it seems to be this is a battle of the stooges. We had, our panelist yesterday on the show telling us that some militias are CIA-backed, some militias are Pentagon-backed. You've got all these stooges at play over here. What do you make of Pezeshkian's latest reaction?
Before that, I also want to add today there is an article in Foreign Affairs of Jawad Zarif. He said that Iran is ready to accept whatever is good for Palestinians. It means that if any agreement is good for Palestinians, it will also accept. So both these things are saying that Iran is not going to leave its allies, and as well as at the same time, Iran is not going to become a roadblock in any sort of agreement. Here, what I feel that I want to highlight here, the role of Turkey is very dubious, because the Turkey has fallen from the list of America and European countries, as it has sided Russia and other places. So it is trying to re-emerge, re-win their faith in Trump's regime. That's why it is trying to do all these things. And I feel that Turkey is the most isolated and vulnerable country in this region. And the situation shows that they are not going to win the war immediately. It will be a long drawn, and ultimately these rebel forces will be pushed inside Turkey, and Turkey is going to suffer a lot, because Erdogan has a short-sighted policy. It has not taken side of anyone. The best policy for Turkey was to align with Russia at that time, but it ignored. Neither it went fully to United States, because Israel does not want Turkey to be a very powerful country in the region. So Turkey is caught into that, and this all game has been orchestrated by Erdogan to gain again the goodwill of Trump. So what I find that this situation has become a total war-like situation, and nothing can be said right now. But at the same time, we also find that Iran, Russia, and even the militia from Yemen, who have prepared 1 lakh fighters, may enter Syria, and they were planning to enter from via Syria to Lebanon, and from there to other part of the Palestinian controlled region. So, but this ceasefire has stopped all these things, and it has given opportunity to Israel, US West, Saudi Arabia to deal these resistance forces block by block, and everybody has blessing to Turkey to carry forward this. But I feel that this will be very catastrophic for the citizen of the Syria, because already 600,000 people are dead, 12 million people are displaced, and Syria has shambled in a very deep crisis. So again, next Gaza is going to become some part of Syria.
Well, all right. Many thanks for those comments, Dr. Hussain. Of course, you're right. Iraq, Lebanon, of course, Hezbollah, because of that ceasefire, not actively participating in this one at this point in time. But the jets from, Russia helping out the Bashar al-Assad regime. You've got Turkish forces that are now rebuffing the rebels right up there on the north. You're right. There are a lot of stakeholders here. It's going to be too soon to say what's going to happen out next. But, General, even as we wrap this segment out, we're going to continue to talk about this every day on News9. But even as we wrap this segment, what next for Bashar al-Assad, General? Because we've heard it time and again that his strategy is to withdraw, regroup, fortify, and then come back with that counter-offensive. But how big and how long will that counter-offensive be? People are also talking about a chemical warfare and how the international community is going to look at it.
Kabir, Assad can go to any extent. He has to remain in power. He's been in power from 2000 onwards. and he is being supported by Russia as well as Iran. Iran has also pushed Hezbollah earlier in Syria. So the point today is that so far Russia is supporting him. Russian forces are using air power. He may be weak, but he's not out. So I suppose that what will happen is the Syria will bounce back. It will try to take back Aleppo. And let's see, the time will tell. But the whole situation has become very volatile and very rightly brought out. Turkey is very dubious. At one point of time, it is with US. At one point of time, it is with Russia. And, as far as why he's doing that, he obviously want to win the confidence of Trump. He's a part of NATO, but not part of European Union. At the same time, he wants to become a Khalifa of the Muslim world. But what will happen and how things will shape up, will he able to do that? The time will tell. But as on today, the Syrian episode shows the situation has become very volatile. The actors and characters in Syria is far, far larger than Israel, Hamas, or Israel, Lebanon, or Israel, Iran. So therefore, the thing is, in this number of actors and characters involved, US is involved, Russia is involved, Israel, Saudi, UAE is involved, Turkey is involved. So it's a complex situation. It becomes, if the situation go out of hand, it is where we are sitting on a volcano. When you find things will erupted and it can start into a larger conflict in West Asia.
You're absolutely right, General. And, many thanks for joining us, General. Always a pleasure to have you with us here on News9. The same goes for Dr. Hussain as well. But as the battle for Aleppo continues to reshape the dynamics, and let's put that graphic out there on the screens as well, the map of Syria as to who controls what, even as the battle for Aleppo continues to reshape the dynamics of the Syrian conflict, you've got the involvement of major players like Turkey, Russia, Iran, and all of this is only heightening the stakes. The shifting control of key areas, including Aleppo, of course, signals a potential reconfiguration of the alliances and the territorial influence. With humanitarian toll mounting and geopolitical tensions rising, the situation remains critical. You've got the aftermath visuals that we're seeing from Syria, from Aleppo, from Idlib. We'll try to put that out on the screen as well, as both regional and international powers recalibrate their strategies. The coming months and days will be pivotal in determining the future of Syria and the wider West Asian region. Before we wrap this segment up, you've got the United States' Department Secretary that said on the 2nd of December that it wants to see a political process to end Syria's civil war. But how long will it take, and does it ever play out and pan out like that? We'll have to wait and find out. Matthew Miller on your screens next.
Nothing has changed with respect to our policy. Assad is a brutal dictator with blood on his hands, the blood of innocent civilians inside Syria, blood of his own people on his hands. Ultimately, what we want to see is a political process forward where the Syrian people get to determine who their leaders are. As I said, United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254 called for such a process. The Syrian government has never participated in that process. We continue to call on them to do so. We continue to call on all countries to use their influence to push forward that kind of political process that would lead to a path forward for the Syrian people, where the regime engages with opposition groups. We also believe it would be helpful if Russia and Iran stopped their destabilizing influence inside Syria. We have seen them continue to destabilize the situation going back more than a decade now, continue to play a role that is unhelpful not just to the Syrian people but to the broader region.
Well, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's a very delicate ceasefire that's taken place between Hezbollah and Lebanon as well. And I'll tell you what's happening on the ground. You've got residents of southern Lebanon that are now reporting facing Israeli gunfire whilst attempting to bury the dead or inspect their destroyed and damaged homes. And all of this, despite that US brokered ceasefire deal. Israeli military has ordered residents from dozens of towns not to return back. The ceasefire does not include any restrictions on residents or establishing a buffer zone of sorts. Here's a complete report of what's happening. Take a look.
Abbas Al-Tanouk says he's been left with injuries and questions after trying to bury a dead cousin at the family graveyard in southern Lebanon, just days after a ceasefire between Israel and armed group Hezbollah came into effect. We just needed 30 minutes, he says, but we were surprised when Israeli tanks encircled us, and that's when the gunfire started. Sprays of gunfire are heard in this shaky cell phone video filmed by Tanook last Friday. Why did we go back? Because there's a ceasefire. That reassures you, he says, adding that he cleared his movements with the Lebanese army and the UN peacekeeping force there. What more did we need? He asks. The ceasefire calls for an end to fighting so residents on both sides of the border can go home. Tanook says he got hurt as he and other relatives fled to a checkpoint operated by Lebanese troops, and that the family was fired on a second time when they tried to go back to the graveyard. The Israeli military did not immediately respond to requests for comment. At this cemetery in Tyre, where people killed in the conflict were temporarily buried, graves are being dug up so the bodies can be taken to their hometowns and villages for funerals. Israeli troops are still on Lebanese territory, and its military has issued orders to residents of 60 southern Lebanese towns, prohibiting them from going home until further notice. Tanook's ordeal highlights the confusion for some who are trying to do that. The U.S. brokered ceasefire deal grants both Lebanon and Israel the right to self-defense, but does not include details about a buffer zone or restrictions on residents.
We were asking, how is this a ceasefire? How is this a deal? We were surprised. It's our right as residents of the South to go back to our villages. It's a halt to the hostilities, and it is a natural right for a son of the South to go to his house. That's normal. Just like the settlers going to his house, I have the right to go to my house.
Both sides have accused each other of breaking the 60-day ceasefire. In Lebanon, some of the 1.2 million people who fled during fighting have been able to return home, albeit to vast destruction. Not Mustafa Ibrahim al-Sayed, a father of 12. He wants to go back to Beit Leaf, which is just over a mile from the border, but is still living in this displacement shelter.
I went there 2 days ago. I went alone. It is all destruction there. As soon as I arrived, there were 2 shells around the town, and I got a message on my phone that our town is within the area we can't go to. So I picked up my stuff and came back here. We fled.
Sayed is working on an agricultural project for displaced people, but says he dreams of returning home. I hope we go back to our town so we can get peace of mind, he says.
Well, that's the end of our West Asian segment, of course. We're going to continue to bring you the latest details vis-a-vis whatever's happening in the West Asian region. For now, a quick commercial breather, but on the other side, we're going to shift our focus to the Ukraine-Russia battle, where Kiev residents are now looking at alternative energy sources amid what many are saying could be one of the most challenging winters for Ukraine. Yet, stay tuned.
Bayern München against Bayer Leverkusen. Musiala! The record cup winners against the current holders.
Oh, it's magnificent!
It was a Bayern triumph in 2020 when they met in the final.
Aleppo!
Bayern lifted the trophy.
Napoli with a chance! 2-0! Radetzky makes a hash of it!
Despite Sven Bender and Kai Havertz's goals, Bayern were too strong.
Lewandowski just dinks it over the keeper. Kai Havertz, audacious shot.
The record cup winners were victorious again. Bayern won 4-2, another trophy for Bayern. Revenge is in the air for Leverkusen.
And Patrick Schick! It has come to Sané!
Who will get through to the next round? Will it be Bayern or will it be Leverkusen who spend the winter still in the cup?
Jonty, Rhodes and Alan Donald, they're kind of the reason why I started playing.
I think most young spinners, when they're growing up, Shane Warne was just everything, wasn't he? He was one of the greats of all time.
Playing against India was always challenging in India.
We're not allowed to bowl a bouncer, so that tells you that they want to see runs on the board. Clean ball.
It's totally different era you in and we are in.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9, shifting our focus to the Ukraine-Russia war, where Kyiv residents had their businesses and various residents now constantly turning to alternative energy sources to survive in what could be Ukraine's most challenging winter since Russia's invasion began.
Facing down what could be the most difficult winter since the start of Russia's invasion, some Ukrainians are rushing to install new generating capacity. These solar panels on a residential building in Kyiv will help keep the heat on and power flowing for about 1,000 families, said Valery Pindyk, who heads the building's Housing Association board. Russia has intensified its attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, with at least 11 major missile and drone strikes since March. About half of Ukraine's generating capacity was knocked out and distribution networks were also damaged. Estimates from the Kyiv School of Economics puts physical damage and financial losses at more than $56 billion. Analysts say coping strategies include more electricity imports from Ukraine's western neighbours and purchases of generators and alternative energy sources like solar panels and batteries. In Kyiv, daily blackouts of 8 hours are common and people plan their days around power availability. That's led some residents and businesses to seek generating capacity outside the central system. Once the lights go out, the immediate fix for many is to turn on generators, a temporary solution, analysts said. And one that drives up costs, said this Kyiv business owner. He says using the generator means 1 kilowatt hour is nearly 5 to 6 times more expensive than usual. Serhiy Kovalenko is the CEO of Yanso, which supplies electricity and gas to more than 3.5 million consumers and up to 100,000 businesses. The company provides options that include solar panels and accumulating batteries and inverters. Kovalenko said demand is high and they've installed up to 8 megawatts of alternative energy options this fall. That's enough to supply around a dozen enterprises, the company said. Kovalenko said they expect to install about 30 to 35 megawatts in the new year. Official data shows that about 1.5 gigawatts of new solar capacity has been installed, but given Ukraine's needs and the scale of wartime damage, such changes are only the beginning. Dozens of financial programs supported by Kyiv's Western allies have been launched to shift Ukraine's energy mix to a cleaner and more sustainable model. Legislative changes were also introduced to simplify equipment purchases and imports. Pindyk said the cost of the solar panels on his building was about $23,000, with the government and Kyiv municipality helping offset about 2/3. Pindyk says they plan to install more panels on other buildings next year.
And take a look at this. Two of the most influential leaders of their time, Angela Merkel and Barack Obama, reunited in Washington, D.C. for a special evening. Speaking to a packed crowd, the former German Chancellor and former U.S. President reflected on the pressing global challenges they faced during their time in power. Now, the event marked the launch of Merkel's new book, Freedom, offering insights into her political journey and her partnership with global leaders like Barack Obama and several others.
You operated very courageously and in admitting large numbers of particularly Syrian migrants in the wake of the Syrian war into Germany. There was a political cost to it. It was not always popular, even within your own party. But you felt as if this was the right thing to do.
But I thought at the time we cannot simply give Sunday speeches saying how much we respect human rights, how much we respect human dignity, and then all these people come who seek sanctuary and we tell them, no, for you we don't have room, we don't have this heart. But I also knew that we cannot take every day or every week 10,000s of refugees. I also knew that there were human traffickers sending these people to Europe. So we needed to address this at the root cause.
What lessons you learned about how to both think about Germany, and you have to deal with your legislature, the Bundestag, at the same time as you're also responsible for helping make sure that the EU as a whole was able to weather this storm.
I was such a great champion of market economy, and I came from a socialist command economy. I had hoped that companies would work responsibly. I had to discover that the banks, with their machinations, brought the world to the brink. And in the end, the states needed to step in to save the situation. So I did have to find a way forward which would save the euro, but would still would not mean a sort of a communitarization of our debt. And that was very hard to understand because we're a union, a community, but we're not a state. And this difference, I think, made it difficult for outsiders to understand. But in the end, I think at the end of the day, we managed it quite well.
Meanwhile, a major blow for Elon Musk. A Delaware judge has ruled that Elon Musk is still not entitled to his $56 billion Tesla compensation package. And this comes even after Tesla shareholders voted to reinstate the package for Elon Musk. Now, the ruling adds another twist to the ongoing battle over Musk's massive pay deal. What does it entail? Well, take a look for yourselves.
Elon Musk still can't have his $56 billion pay package. That was the ruling from a Delaware judge on Monday. The case involves the largest ever compensation package at a US public company. It also comes after Musk has become a close advisor of President-elect Donald Trump and has been tasked to help slash US government bureaucracy. The same judge, Chancellor Kathleen McCormick, in January deemed the $56 billion pay package from Tesla excessive and rescinded it. Then in June, Tesla shareholders voted in favor of reinstating Musk's compensation. The automaker has said in court filings that McCormick should recognize the vote. But her 101-page opinion Monday said a ratification vote like the one Tesla used in June had to be conducted before the trial, and that Tesla's board was not entitled to hit reset to restore Musk's pay package. Many small-time investors and Musk fans promptly criticized the decision on social media, while Tesla said it would appeal. McCormick also blocked lawyers who brought the case from getting the $6 billion in fees they had demanded. Instead, she ordered Tesla to pay the attorneys $345 million, still one of the largest ever awards in securities litigation. The sum of Musk's pay package has actually risen in line with Tesla shares, which have surged since Trump's election to office. His compensation is now worth about $101 billion.
Meanwhile, Governor Gavin Newsom is gearing up for a showdown with the Trump administration. Now, just on Monday, California's Democratic governor announced plans to seek up to $25 million in extra funding for the legal battles. And this move comes as Newsom braces for policy clashes with President-elect Donald Trump's incoming administration. Many are calling it the Trumponomics.
California lawmakers returned to the state capital of Sacramento on Monday ahead of a special session called by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom to Trump-proof the liberal state for the second term of the conservative president-elect. The agenda for the start of the session included swearing in new members, choosing an assembly speaker, and a few brief remarks. After securing the speakership, Democrat Robert Rivas vowed to uphold the values of the state against potential threats under the new administration.
If LGBTQ people come under attack, if hardworking immigrants are targeted, if women's reproductive freedom is threatened, we will fight back with everything we have.
Newsom also announced he is seeking up to $25 million in additional funding for legal fights with the incoming administration. If approved by the legislature, the California Department of Justice and state agencies would get the extra funding for court battles in areas such as reproductive rights, environmental protection, and immigration. During Trump's first term, the state filed over 120 lawsuits challenging the administration's actions. After Newsom announced the special legislative session last month, Trump responded on social media that the governor, quote, is trying to kill our nation's beautiful California.
But the big news coming out of the United States is that the United States has once again turned up the heat on China's semiconductor industry. That's right. Just on Monday, Washington announced its third major crackdown in 3 years, imposing strict export controls on 140 Chinese companies, including chip equipment giant Nora Technology Group.
The US launched yet another crackdown on China's semiconductor industry on Monday. It's the third such move in 3 years and curbs exports to 140 companies. Those targeted include chip equipment maker Nora Technology Group as well as other Chinese market leaders. The export restrictions also take aim at shipments of advanced memory chips and more chip-making tools to China. The move is one of the Biden administration's last large-scale efforts to weaken China's ability to access and produce chips. It comes just weeks before the swearing-in of Republican President-elect Donald Trump. He is expected to retain many of Biden's tough-on-China measures. Washington believes Beijing could use chips to advance AI for military applications and threaten US national security. The latest package includes curbs on China-bound shipments of high-bandwidth memory chips, which are critical for high-end applications like AI training. Chinese companies facing new restrictions include nearly 24 semiconductor companies. 2 investment companies and over 100 chip-making toolmakers also face being hit. Some of the impacted firms work with China's Huawei Technologies. The tech giant has faced US sanctions for years and is now at the centre of China's advanced chip production and development. Beijing argued the US move undermined the international economic trade order and disrupted global supply chains. It further said China will take measures to safeguard the rights and interests of its firms. On Tuesday, Beijing responded with export restrictions of its own. It said it would ban the export of dual-use items related to gallium, germanium, antimony and superhard materials to the US with immediate effect. China has stepped up its drive to become self-sufficient in the semiconductor sector in recent years. But it's still well behind chip industry leaders like Nvidia in AI chips and chip equipment maker ASML in the Netherlands.
Well, with that, we've come to an end to this segment of Global Lens. But before we let you go, there's a really cool story that's coming out of Japan as well. Because once a common sight in Japan's forests, there were bear hunters that are now becoming increasingly rare, with many growing older and of course fewer in number as well. And as bears venture closer to towns and villages, of course, who can stop them, attacks on people are on the rise. And this has left residents in Japan concerned about the future, wondering what will happen when these specific expert bear hunters who have traditionally kept the bear population in check can no longer perform this vital role. Here's a complete report. Many thanks for watching. We'll catch you again soon.
In rural Japan, a gunshot rings out. A bear slumps in a cage.
This brown bear got too close to a human community. It wasn't right here, but over that way in the middle of the town and on the roads close by. In this kind of situation, we have no choice other than to trap them.
Bears are making their way closer to homes and putting people's lives at risk. Keeping the townspeople safe often falls on the shoulders of a dwindling band of aging hunters, like 75-year-old Haruo Ikegami.
I'm often the first one that gets there when they're caught like this. And I always say, "Oh, come on, you're already in there? I can't bear it."
Once a common sight among the trees, hunters like Ikegami are now older and fewer in number than before. Japan's population is both aging and shrinking. As of 2020, About 60% of gun license holders, like Ikegami, are over 60. And in areas where bears roam, some residents wonder what will happen when these hunters can no longer do their job. In the town of Naie, Tatsuhito Yamagishi has accused the local government of taking hunters for granted.
They say we should train new hunters, but there's nothing specific on how we should do this. Who's going to hold the training sessions and the workshops? In a few years' time, when we are all over 70 years old, will there even be anybody left who could teach people how to hunt bears? Even if they wanted to.
Naie's local government declined to comment on the dispute with Yamagishi, but said officials were taking steps to address the bear problem. Japan's Environment Ministry says it subsidizes local governments to train officials and conduct bear drills. But the country's reliance on recreational bear hunters could become unsustainable, according to the hunters themselves, officials, residents, and experts Reuters spoke to. Both black and brown bears' habitats have been expanding, in part because of depopulation in rural areas, experts say. Some believe this, and less managed farmland, may be making bears more daring, and the animals appear to be raising cubs closer to human settlements, causing them to fear people less than before. All this has contributed to an increase in human bear incidents. In the 12 months through March 2024, 219 people were attacked. 6 fatally. More than 9,000 black and brown bears were trapped and culled over that period, according to Japan's Environment Ministry. 84-year-old Katsuo Harada carries scars from over 20 years ago when a bear sank its teeth into his skull.
It was like it was gnawing on a raw radish, scraping and crunching. I passed out at the sound and I don't know what happened beyond that.
Harada is now part of a group that helps keep problematic wildlife at bay.
I feel that I have to protect the people living here. Whenever I set a trap, you saw today there are 4 locations. I'm driven forward by the thought that if I hadn't laid the traps, someone could have been killed.
One common way to trap bears is by using a large cage with bait, like a deer carcass, salmon, or honey. The trap is designed so that the creature steps on a metal plate when it goes near the bait, triggering the door to close. The local authorities then make a call on what to do with the animal and may involve licensed hunters to kill it. The trapped bear is looked after and fed until it is culled. As an alternative solution, some companies are turning to technology. This monster wolf robot growls, barks, and emits threats. Costing about $2,500, it is triggered by a sensor and powered by solar energy. It has shown some success, but Yamagishi explains that it takes years for humans to learn how to trap bears, and insists their expertise will remain indispensable. Responding to the increase in attacks, the Japanese government this year proposed relaxing rules around gun use to make it easier to shoot bears in urban areas. But hunters say it's hard to find new recruits because the job is expensive, unappealing, and exhausting. Some get 8,000 yen, or about $50, from local governments for a bear cull. This might cover expenses and fuel, Ikegami says, but little else. A system is needed, they suggest, where hunters are paid enough to support a family. Because if the younger generation doesn't take up the torch, the last line of defense will soon be gone.
It's Bayern München against Bayer Leverkusen. Musiala! The record cup winners against the current holders.
Oh, it's magnificent!
It was a Bayern triumph in 2020 when they met in